You are only using half your brain, not in the way people say it as a motivational phrase. Literally, the system you grew up in was specifically designed to develop one half of your brain while systematically suppressing the other. And the half they suppressed is the one connected to intuition, pattern recognition, creativity, spiritual experience, and the ability to see through illusion. This was not an accident. The left brain processes language, logic, linear thinking, and obedience to rules. It is the part of you that follows instructions, meets deadlines, and accepts the world as it is told to be. The right brain sees the whole picture. It recognizes patterns before the logical mind can explain them. It connects to emotion, to creativity, to the kind of deep knowing that cannot be measured or categorized. One of these halves built the system you live in, and one of them could dismantle it. Today, we go into why the right brain was suppressed, who benefits from keeping it that way, and what becomes possible when you finally bring both sides back into alignment. Let's go deeper. The two hemispheres of your brain do not just process information differently, they construct two entirely different versions of reality. The left hemisphere is a specialist. It takes the continuous flow of experience and breaks it into pieces. It categorizes, labels, sequences, and analyzes. It is the part of your brain that produces language, that inner voice narrating your life. It is brilliant at detail, at logic, at following established rules and systems, and it is deeply invested in the world it already knows. The left hemisphere prefers what is familiar, what is predictable, what can be explained within existing frameworks. The right hemisphere is something else entirely. It does not see pieces, it sees wholes. It processes the full complexity of a situation simultaneously rather than sequentially. It reads emotion, body language, and context. It recognizes patterns that the logical mind cannot yet articulate. It is the seat of creativity, of empathy, of spiritual experience, and of the kind of insight that arrives not through reasoning, but through sudden, complete knowing. Neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist spent decades studying the relationship between the two hemispheres. His conclusion, documented in his landmark work, was stark. Western civilization has become dangerously dominated by left hemisphere thinking. And the consequences of that dominance, a world that is technically sophisticated but spiritually impoverished, efficient but meaningless, connected but profoundly lonely, are visible everywhere. This did not happen by accident. Let's go deeper. Look at how a child is educated, and you will see the suppression in real time. From the moment a child enters formal schooling, the curriculum is almost entirely oriented toward left hemisphere development. Reading, writing, mathematics, memorization, sequential problem solving, rule following. These are all left hemisphere functions, and they are treated as the only functions that matter. What happens to right hemisphere development in school? Art is a hobby, music is an elective, physical movement is a break between real subjects, imagination is tolerated in early childhood and quietly discouraged as the child gets older. Intuition is never mentioned. Emotional intelligence is not on the curriculum. The ability to see the whole picture, to think systemically, to recognize patterns across disciplines, to sit with complexity without immediately reducing it to a formula, is not tested, not rewarded, and not developed. By the time a child becomes an adult, they have spent 12 or more years in an institution that rewarded one hemisphere and systematically neglected the other. And then they enter a workplace that continues this process, measuring productivity and outputs, rewarding compliance, punishing deviation, and treating creativity as a luxury rather than a fundamental human capacity. The result is a population that is extraordinarily good at following systems and extraordinarily poor at questioning them, which is precisely what a system requires to survive. Let's go deeper. Here is what makes this even more extraordinary. The ancient world knew about the two hemispheres of consciousness long before modern neuroscience gave them names. The ancient Egyptians represented this duality through the eye of Horus, specifically distinguishing between the left eye, associated with the moon, intuition and inner knowing, and the right eye, associated with the sun, logic and outer perception. The entire symbolic language of Egyptian spirituality was built around the integration of these two modes of consciousness. The Taoist tradition encoded the same understanding in the symbol of the Tao itself, the interplay of yin and yang. Not two opposing forces to be resolved into one, but two complementary modes of knowing that together constitute the whole. The suppression of yin, the receptive, intuitive, holistic mode, in favor of yang, the active, analytical, linear mode, was understood as the fundamental imbalance that produced suffering in both individuals and civilizations. The Hermetic tradition spoke of the reconciliation of opposites, solver et coagula, as the central work of inner transformation, the alchemical marriage of the solar and lunar principles within the individual psyche, left and right, analysis and intuition, logic and vision. Even within the mainstream Western tradition, the symbol of the caduceus, two serpents wound around a central staff, used to this day as the symbol of medicine, encoded the same understanding. Two opposing forces brought into balance around a central axis. The result was healing. Every serious tradition on Earth recognized that wholeness required both hemispheres of consciousness working together. The modern world chose one and called it intelligence. Let's go deeper. When the right hemisphere is systematically suppressed, specific things happen to human consciousness, and when you look at the dominant features of modern life, you are looking directly at the consequences. The first consequence is the loss of meaning. Meaning is not a left hemisphere function. The left brain can process facts, construct arguments, and optimize systems, but it cannot tell you why any of it matters. Meaning requires the holistic, connective perception of the right hemisphere. A population operating primarily from the left hemisphere is a population perpetually efficient and perpetually empty. The second consequence is the inability to tolerate ambiguity. The left brain requires resolution. It needs things to be categorized, decided, finished. The right brain can hold complexity, sit with contradiction, and remain functional in the presence of the unknown. A left hemisphere dominant culture becomes allergic to nuance, reducing everything to binary oppositions, demanding immediate answers, and treating uncertainty as a threat rather than an invitation. The third consequence is the disconnection from the body. The right hemisphere processes somatic experience, the felt sense of being in a body, the emotional signals that the nervous system is constantly generating. Left hemisphere dominance produces people who live almost entirely in their heads, cut off from the intelligence of their own physical experience. This disconnection is the foundation of the anxiety epidemic, the chronic stress epidemic, and the epidemic of people who cannot explain why they feel so profoundly unwell, despite having everything the left brain told them to want. And the fourth consequence, perhaps the most significant, is the inability to perceive the whole. A mind operating from one hemisphere cannot see the system it is inside. It can only see the parts it has been trained to focus on. And a population that cannot perceive the system it is inside is a population that will never question it. Let's go deeper. So how do you bring the suppressed hemisphere back online? Because this is not permanent damage. The right hemisphere was not removed, it was neglected. And neglected capacities can be rebuilt. The first method is deliberate exposure to whole pattern thinking. This means regularly engaging with experiences that cannot be processed linearly. Music, particularly playing or creating it rather than just consuming it. Visual art. Time in nature, which the right hemisphere processes as a unified living system rather than a collection of separate objects. These are not leisure activities, they are neurological rehabilitation. The second method is the practice of silence. The left hemisphere runs on language. That constant inner narrator, the voice that is commenting, analyzing, planning, and judging every moment of your experience, is left hemisphere activity. Meditation, contemplative practice, and extended time without verbal input are among the most direct ways to reduce left hemisphere dominance and allow the quieter perceptual mode of the right hemisphere to come forward. The third method is the deliberate cultivation of intuition, not as a mystical concept, but as a practical skill. Before making a decision, before analyzing a situation, pause and notice what your body already knows. The right hemisphere processes information faster than the left and communicates its conclusions through felt sense, through gut knowing, through the kind of immediate recognition that arrives before reasoning can catch up. Learning to notice and trust these signals is learning to use the half of your brain the system trained you to ignore. The fourth method is the most radical. Begin questioning the frameworks you were given. The left hemisphere is a defender of existing categories. It resists information that does not fit its established models. The deliberate practice of sitting with perspectives that challenge your assumptions, not to abandon all framework, but to hold it lightly, is one of the most powerful ways to shift the balance of hemispheric dominance. Your right brain has been waiting. It never stopped processing. It never stopped seeing the patterns. It was simply never given permission to speak. The system that educated you was built by left hemisphere thinking, for left hemisphere thinking, to produce left hemisphere people. People who follow rules without questioning them. People who optimize within systems without seeing the systems themselves. People who are extraordinarily productive and profoundly disconnected from the deeper intelligence that every serious tradition on Earth recognized as the foundation of genuine human wholeness. They did not need to lobotomize you. They just needed to run you through 12 years of an institution that rewarded one half of your brain and quietly starved the other. But here is what they could not take from you. The right hemisphere never went offline. It has been processing this entire time, seeing the patterns, sensing the connections, knowing things your logical mind has not yet given itself permission to acknowledge. The work now is not to become something new. It is to stop suppressing what was always there. Both hemispheres, both modes of knowing, the full bandwidth of what a human being actually is. That is what they were afraid of, and that is exactly what you are going to become. If this landed, leave a comment below. Tell us which half of your brain you think has been running your life. We read everyone. We will see you in the next one.